Admiral Vexthul stood in the command center of his massive warship, looking at the bright screen that showed their latest victory. The Carathian Empire had just taken over another star system, making it their 847th conquest. For 300 years, his people had swept across the galaxy like an unstoppable storm, crushing every civilization they encountered. His ship's scanner officer called out from across the bridge, "Admiral, we have detected a new system, single yellow star with 9 planets. The third planet shows signs of primitive life." Vexthul walked over to examine the readings. The blue and green world looked peaceful from this distance, with small metal objects orbiting around it. "What level of development are we looking at?" "Very basic, sir. They have achieved chemical rocket propulsion and have established a few small stations in orbit. Their technology appears to be several thousand years behind our own. Standard primitive classification." The Admiral nodded. This would be another easy addition to the Empire. Scan their population centers and prepare. The evacuation broadcast in their primary language. Meanwhile on Earth, General Kim Dae was reviewing morning reports in his underground command center beneath Seoul. The 45-year-old career soldier had spent his entire adult life preparing for conflicts, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. The communication officer at the far end of the room suddenly stood up, his face pale. "General, we're receiving a transmission from outside our solar system. The signal is incredibly powerful and appears to be directed at our entire planet." Kim Dae frowned. "Outside our solar system? That's impossible. Run a diagnostic on all equipment." "Sir, the diagnostic shows everything is working perfectly. The transmission is real and it's being broadcast in Korean, English, Chinese, and dozens of other languages simultaneously." The room fell silent as the alien message played through the speakers. The voice was mechanical but clear. "Inhabitants of the third planet, you are hereby notified that your system has been selected for annexation by the Carathian Empire. You have 72 standard hours to evacuate your world and relocate to designated refugee sectors. Failure to comply will result in forced removal and potential casualties. This is your only warning." Lieutenant Park So-young, who had been monitoring long-range sensors, looked up from her station with confusion. "General, this has to be some kind of elaborate joke or military exercise. Aliens don't exist. Kim Dae had served in 3 wars and commanded troops in conflicts across 2 continents. He had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming that this was real. "Lieutenant, I want you to contact every major observatory on the planet. Find out if anyone has detected unusual objects in space." Within an hour, reports started flooding in from around the world. Radio telescopes in Australia had detected massive energy signatures approaching from the outer solar system. Optical telescopes in Chile had spotted what appeared to be artificial structures, moving faster than any known technology could achieve. The International Space Station reported visual confirmation of unknown vessels, huge and angular, unlike anything humanity had ever built. President Johnson called an emergency session with world leaders, but Kim Dae knew there wasn't time for political debates. While governments argued about whether the threat was real, he began making preparations. "So-young, I want you to send a message back to these Carathians. Make it clear and simple." Park So-young set up the communication array, her hands shaking, slightly as she realized the weight of what was happening. "What should I tell them, sir?" Kim Dae looked out the window at the bustling city above their bunker. Millions of people going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their entire world had just been given an ultimatum by an alien empire. He thought about his own family, his wife teaching at the university, his daughter studying for her medical exams. "Tell them this," he said firmly. "To the Carathian Empire, we have received your message. We understand your position, but we must respectfully decline your offer. Earth is our home. It has been our home for thousands of years, and it will remain our home. We will not abandon it, and we will not relocate to become refugees in our own galaxy. If you wish to take our world, you will have to fight for it." After the message was sent, Park So-young turned back to her sensor readings. Her expression grew more worried by the minute. "General, I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching our solar system. Whatever's coming, it's big. Really big." Kim Dae nodded grimly, knowing that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. They were about to go to war with an empire that had conquered 847 worlds, and they had never even fought a battle in space. The space around Earth suddenly filled with massive alien ships as the Carathian war fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Vexthul stood on his command bridge, looking down at the small blue planet with the same casual interest he might show a bug he was about to step on. "Fleet status report," he commanded, adjusting his ceremonial armor. This would be Conquest, number 848, and he expected it to be over by dinner time. "All 200 ships are in position, Admiral," his second-in-command reported. "Plasma cannons are charged, shield generators at full power. The primitive inhabitants appear to be launching some kind of response." Vexthul laughed as he watched the tactical display. Tiny human vessels were rising from Earth's surface, looking like metal toys compared to his kilometer-long battleships. "Look at those pathetic rockets. Are they seriously planning to fight us with chemical propulsion?" On Earth, Captain Lee, Min-ho was strapped into the pilot seat of humanity's most advanced spacecraft, which had been built just 6 months ago, using every piece of cutting-edge technology they could manage. Even so, he knew his ship would look like a bicycle next to a sports car when compared to the alien vessels. "All squadrons, this is Captain Lee," he spoke into his radio. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight here. We're trying to survive, long enough to learn something useful." His co-pilot, Major Kim Yoo-jin, was frantically working at a jury-rigged control panel. Min-ho, the scientists back home, have been studying those alien scanner beams for the past 3 days. "They think they've figured out how their technology works." "Think isn't good enough," Lee replied, watching as alien ships began targeting his squadron. "We need to know." The first Carathian plasma blast lit up space like a miniature sun. The beam struck Lee's ship dead center, and his shields flared and died instantly. According to every simulation they had run, his vessel should have been vaporized. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human ship's hull, made from a new alloy that Earth scientists had developed by studying fragments of the alien scanner beams, began to glow. The ship didn't explode. It absorbed the energy. Admiral Vexthul blinked in surprise. "Did that primitive ship just survive a direct hit from our main cannon?" "Impossible, sir," his tactical officer replied, running diagnostics on his weapons. "Our plasma cannons can melt through any known material. There must be a malfunction." But Lee Min-ho was already moving, his ship accelerating toward the nearest Carathian vessel. "Yoo-jin, are you getting those readings?" "Affirmative," his co-pilot replied, his voice excited. "Their weapons work by creating a controlled plasma field. If we can reverse the polarity of our hull plating, we might be able to turn their own energy against them." Back on Earth, Dr. Choi Hee-jin was watching the battle from the emergency command center that had been built beneath the Korean peninsula. She had spent the last 72 hours working with scientists from around the world, trying to understand alien technology that was thousands of years more advanced than anything humans had ever built. "The key was in their scanner beams," she explained, to General Kim Dae, who was coordinating the defense effort. "When they first scanned our planet, they didn't just look at us. They accidentally showed us how their technology works." "How is that possible?" Kim Dae asked, watching as more human ships launched into what appeared to be certain death. "Think of it like this," Dr. Choi said, pulling up a diagram on her screen. "Imagine you're a caveman and someone shines a flashlight at you. You don't understand electricity, but you can see that the light comes from the device. Now imagine that person accidentally drops the flashlight, and you get to examine it." On the tactical display, they watched as Captain Lee's ship fired its nuclear missiles at the alien fleet. But these weren't ordinary nuclear weapons anymore. Using what they had learned from the alien scanner technology, human engineers had modified the warheads to phase shift their molecular structure at the moment of impact. Admiral Vexthul watched in horror as the primitive human missile passed right through his ship's shields as if they didn't exist, then exploded against his hull with devastating force. "How did they do that?" he demanded, as damage reports flooded in from across his fleet. "Our shields are designed to stop any physical projectile." His science officer was frantically analyzing the attack. "Admiral, somehow they've learned to manipulate quantum phase relationships. That missile existed in normal space until it contacted our shields. then shifted to a parallel quantum state where our defensive systems couldn't detect it. That's impossible, Vexthul snapped. It takes most civilizations thousands of years to develop quantum manipulation technology. More human ships were approaching now, and each one was using different tactics. Some had modified their engines to emit electromagnetic pulses that disrupted Carathian targeting systems. Others had somehow learned to bend their missiles' flight paths using gravitational fields that shouldn't exist. Dr. Choi smiled as she watched the alien fleet's formation begin to break apart. General, I think we've just taught the galaxy's greatest military empire their first lesson about human creativity. When you're fighting for your home, you learn fast. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, humanity had hope. 3 months had passed since the first battle, and Admiral Vexthul was beginning to understand why the Carathian Empire had never faced a war that lasted this long. Every species they had conquered before had either surrendered immediately or been wiped out within days. Humans were different. They kept fighting, kept adapting, and kept surprising everyone. Commander Han Woo-jin floated in the pilot seat of what used to be a deep space mining vessel. The ship had been designed to extract minerals from asteroids, but now it carried modified plasma cutters and improvised missile launchers. His entire squadron was made up of similar converted civilian ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, even old passenger liners that had been turned into weapons of war. Target convoy is approaching Sector 7, his navigator reported. 12 heavy transports with escort frigates, standard Carathian formation. Han Woo-jin smiled grimly. The aliens always used the same tactics, the same formations, the same predictable strategies. It was like they had a rulebook for warfare and couldn't imagine doing anything that wasn't written in it. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them in a straight fight, he told his squadron over the radio. We're miners and engineers, not soldiers, but we know how to set up a proper demolition. For the past 2 weeks, Han Woo-jin's team had been placing what looked like random debris throughout this section of space. Broken ship parts, scattered metal fragments, pieces of destroyed satellites. To any casual observer, it appeared to be the normal aftermath of battle. The Carathian convoy flew right into the middle of it without a second thought. Now, Han Woo-jin whispered, the debris suddenly came alive. What the aliens had thought were harmless metal scraps were actually sophisticated mines, each one equipped with sensors and small thrusters. They attached themselves to the Carathian ships like metallic parasites and began cutting through the hulls with industrial-grade plasma torches. This is impossible, the Carathian convoy commander screamed over the radio. Debris doesn't attack, metal doesn't move on its own. But Han Woo-jin's people had been mining asteroids for decades. They knew how to make machines that could work. In the vacuum of space, operate independently and cut through the toughest materials. The aliens had superior weapons and shields, but they had never encountered an enemy that could turn garbage into guided missiles. Back on the main Carathian command ship, Admiral Vexthul was reviewing battle reports that made no sense according to everything he had learned about warfare. How many ships have we lost this week? 47 vessels, sir, his aide reported nervously. But here's the strange part. Most of them weren't destroyed in direct combat. The humans are using tactics we've never seen before. Vexthul pulled up the tactical display showing recent engagements. Human forces had been using their own destroyed ships as kinetic weapons, launching the wreckage at Carathian vessels at high speed. They had turned communication satellites into spy networks. They had even convinced some of his own soldiers to switch sides. Bring me the prisoner interrogation reports, he ordered. Major Song Jia had been working in the makeshift prison facility that Earth had established for captured Carathian soldiers. Unlike the execution chambers that the Empire typically used for enemy prisoners, the human facility looked more like a medical center crossed with a university dormitory. How are our guests doing today? She asked the guard, a former language teacher who had volunteered for the job. 3 more of them asked to speak with you privately, the guard replied. They seem confused about why we're treating them so well. Song Ji-ah had discovered something interesting about Carathian culture. During her conversations with the prisoners, their entire military system was based on fear and punishment. Soldiers who failed were executed. Prisoners of war were typically tortured for information and then killed. The concept of treating enemies with respect was completely foreign to them. She entered the common area where a group of Carathian prisoners were sitting around tables, eating human food and reading translated books. One of them, a young officer named Kethamar, looked up as she approached. "Major Song," he said in carefully practiced Korean, "I have been thinking about our conversations. In the Empire, we are taught that all other species are inferior and must be conquered or destroyed, but you treat us better than our own commanders ever did." "Why does that surprise you?" Song Jia asked, sitting down across from him. "Because we came here to destroy your world," Kethamar replied. "We were going to kill your families, enslave your people, take everything you have. Yet you give us food, medical care, books to read. You even let us call our families back home to tell them we're alive." Song Jia nodded. "That's what civilized people do, Kethamar. We don't judge an entire species by the actions of their government." Over the following weeks, word began to spread through the Carathian fleet. Soldiers who had been captured by humans were being treated with dignity and respect. Some were even learning human languages and customs. A few had sent messages back to their own ships, describing their experiences. Admiral Vexthul was horrified to discover that morale among his troops was collapsing. Soldiers were beginning to question why they were fighting a war against people who showed them more kindness than their own empire ever had. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving desertion reports from 17 different ships. Some of our crew members are actually asking to be captured by the humans." Dr. Choi Hae-jin, monitoring the situation from Earth's command, Senta smiled as she read the latest intelligence reports. "General Kim Dae, I think we're winning a war that the Carathians don't even understand they're fighting." "What do you mean?" the general asked. "They expected to conquer us through superior firepower," she explained. "But we're conquering them through superior humanity. Every prisoner we treat well, every act of kindness we show, every time we prove that we're better than they thought we were. It's like a virus spreading through their fleet." The war was changing in ways that no military academy had ever taught, and the Carathians were discovering that some battles couldn't be won with weapons alone. Admiral Vexthul stood in the ruins of what had been his command bridge, watching. Repair crews tried to fix the massive hole in his ship's hull. This was his third flagship in 4 months. The first had been destroyed by human missiles that somehow passed through his shields. The second had been torn apart by a converted mining ship that had rammed it at full speed. Now this one was barely spaceworthy after what the humans called a ghost attack. "Explain to me again how this happened," he demanded from his tactical officer, who was nursing a broken arm from the explosion. "Sir, we detected a human vessel drifting in space 2 weeks ago. Our scans showed it was completely dead. No power, no life signs, no weapons active. We assumed it was battle damage and ignored it." Vexthul's jaw tightened. "And?" "It wasn't dead, sir. Somehow they had masked all their energy signatures while keeping a skeleton crew alive in shielded compartments. When we passed within range, they fired everything they had directly into our reactor core." The Admiral looked at the damage report. 30% of his ship's systems were offline, and they had lost another 200 crew members. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had never encountered an enemy that would allow their own people to drift in space for weeks, pretending to be corpses, just for a chance at one surprise attack. "This ends now," he declared, his voice echoing through the damaged bridge. "I'm tired of playing games with these primitives. Send orders to all fleet commanders. Begin bombardment of their major population centers. Burn their cities to ash. If they want to fight like animals, we'll treat them like animals." But thousands of kilometers away, Colonel Yun Tai-ho was already putting humanity's most desperate plan into action. He stood in the control center of what had been Earth's greatest achievement, a massive space facility where humanity had been building ships designed to carry millions of people to distant stars. "Colonel, are you absolutely certain about this?" asked Dr. Park Ji-won, the lead scientist who had spent 15 years designing the colony vessels. "These ships represent our entire future. They're our ticket to becoming a spacefaring civilization." Yun Tai-ho looked through the viewing window at the 12 enormous ships floating in space nearby. Each one was the size of a small city, designed to carry 50,000 colonists. along with everything needed to establish new human settlements on distant worlds. They contained genetic banks, cultural archives, technological blueprints, everything humanity would need to survive, if Earth was ever destroyed. "Doctor, if we lose this war, we won't have a future to worry about," he replied grimly. "And if we win this war by using these ships as weapons, we'll have earned the right to build new ones." Lieutenant Nam Hai-won, who had been working on the colony project since graduating from the Space Academy, felt tears running down her face as she watched the conversion process begin. "Sir, we're destroying everything we've worked for. These ships were going to carry Korean families to the stars. My own sister was selected for the first colony mission." "I know," Yoon replied, placing a hand on her shoulder. "My daughter was selected too, but right now these ships can serve a better purpose." The conversion process was both simple and heartbreaking. The colony ships had been designed with massive engines capable of accelerating their enormous bulk to significant fractions of light speed. Instead of carrying colonists and supplies, they were now being loaded with the densest materials Earth could provide: depleted uranium, compressed metals, even the cores of old nuclear reactors. "Target coordinates confirmed," reported Major Kim Borum from the navigation station. "We've identified 7 major Carathian supply depots across their home system. These facilities provide fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts for their entire war fleet." Yoon Tai-ho studied the tactical display showing Carathian space. The enemy had never expected anyone to attack their home territory. Their supply bases were heavily fortified against normal weapons, but they weren't designed to withstand the impact of city-sized projectiles traveling at 30% of light speed. "What about their civilian populations?" Nam Hai-won asked quietly. "Some of these supply depots are near Carathian cities. According to our intelligence from the prisoners, these are purely military installations," Yoon replied. "We're not targeting civilians. We're cutting off their ability to continue this war." Dr. Park Ji-won ran final calculations on her computer. "Colonel, the kinetic energy from these impacts will be equivalent to several hundred nuclear weapons. We're not just destroying supply depots, we're going to create artificial earthquakes on their planets." "Good," Yoon said coldly. "Maybe that will get their attention." The launch sequence began with the first colony ship, New Seoul, slowly accelerating away from Earth. Its destination was a Carathian fuel depot that supplied the entire invasion fleet. As it picked up speed, its massive engines pushed it faster and faster until it became a streak of light racing across space. One by one, the other colony ships followed. New Busan was aimed at a weapons manufacturing facility. New Incheon targeted a ship repair station. Each vessel represented decades of human dreams and hopes, now transformed into instruments of war. "Time to impact, 47 hours, reported the tracking officer. "All vessels are on course and maintaining acceleration." Admiral Vexthul was preparing to give the order to bombard Earth cities when his communications officer received an urgent message from the Carathian homeworlds. "Sir, we're getting emergency transmissions from High Command. Something is attacking our supply network." Before Vexthul could respond, the first impact occurred. The colony ship New Seoul struck the fuel depot at Korth Prime with the force of a small asteroid. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Within 6 hours, all 7 targets had been destroyed. The Carathian war machine, which had operated smoothly for 3 centuries, suddenly found itself without fuel, ammunition, or spare parts. "Impossible," Vexthul whispered, staring at the reports flooding in from across the Empire. No species would sacrifice their own future just to win a single battle. But humanity had just proven that some things were worth any sacrifice. Earth remained free, and the Carathians were beginning to understand that they were fighting an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Admiral Vexthul had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries, but he had never experienced anything like this. His tactical display showed the devastating reality. Of the 200 warships that had arrived at Earth 6 months ago, only 67 remained operational. The rest had been destroyed, damaged beyond repair, or abandoned by crews who no longer believed in the war. "Sir, we've received another desertion report," his aide announced nervously. "The crew of the battleship Dominance has requested transfer." to human custody. They say they'd rather be prisoners than continue fighting. Vexthul closed his eyes and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The Carathian Empire had conquered 847 worlds using the same strategy, overwhelming force followed by quick surrender. It had never failed before. "And our supply situation?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Critical, sir. With our home system depots destroyed, we have perhaps 2 weeks of fuel and ammunition remaining. Food supplies are running even lower." The Admiral looked out at the small blue planet that had somehow brought the mighty Carathian Empire to its knees. These humans had done something no other species had ever managed. They had made the Empire question itself. Captain Shin Do-young was reviewing diplomatic protocols in her office at the United Nations building when her secure communication system activated. She had been Earth's lead negotiator before the war, specializing in international trade agreements. Now she found herself preparing for humanity's first conversation with an alien species that wasn't trying to kill them. "Captain Shin, this is Admiral Vexthul of the Carathian Fleet," the translated voice said through the speakers. "I am requesting a formal parley under galactic warfare conventions." Shin Do-young had studied every piece of information they had gathered about Carathian culture during the war. This was unprecedented. According to their prisoners, the Empire never negotiated with species they considered inferior. "Admiral, I am authorized to speak for Earth's government. What are your terms for discussion? I propose a meeting at the abandoned mining station in your asteroid belt. Neutral ground, with minimal security forces from both sides." 3 days later, Captain Shin Do-young found herself floating in a conference room aboard an old mining platform, face to face with the alien commander who had tried to destroy her world. Admiral Vexthul was taller than she had expected, with blue-gray skin and large eyes that seemed to hold centuries of experience. "Captain Shin," he began, his voice carrying a tone she hadn't expected, respect. "I must begin with an admission. The Carathian Empire has made a grave error." General Kim Dae, who had joined the meeting as Earth's military representative, leaned forward. "What kind of error, Admiral?" "We assumed your species was primitive because your technology was less advanced than ours. We thought we were being merciful by giving you a warning to evacuate. We believed you would see the wisdom in avoiding a hopeless fight." Shin Do-young nodded carefully. "And now?" Vexthul was quiet for a long moment. "Now I understand that when you refused our warning, you were giving us one in return. You were telling us that you would fight for your home regardless of the cost. We should have listened." The human delegation exchanged glances. This was not the conversation they had expected to have. "Admiral," General Kim Dae said slowly, "are you saying the Carathian Empire is prepared to end hostilities?" "I am saying more than that," Vexthul replied. "I'm saying that the Empire has learned something it has never had to learn before. That sometimes the wise choice is to walk away from a fight, even when you have superior weapons." Over the following weeks, the negotiations continued. The Carathians agreed to withdraw all forces from Earth's solar system and provide reparations for the damage caused during the war. In exchange, Earth agreed to release all prisoners and share some of their technological innovations, particularly their advances in adaptive engineering and psychological warfare. But the real breakthrough came when Admiral Vexthul submitted his final report to the Carathian High Command. The document was only 3 pages long, but it changed everything. Species designation, human. Planet designation, Earth. Sol system, military assessment, extreme threat level. Recommendation, immediate cessation of all hostile activities and establishment of formal diplomatic relations. Notes: this species demonstrates unprecedented adaptability, creativity, and willingness to sacrifice for survival. They do not fight to conquer. They fight to remain free. Any future conflict with humanity should be avoided at all costs. Dr. Park Min-seo had never imagined that her career as a linguistics professor would lead her to become Earth's first interstellar ambassador. 3 months after the peace treaty was signed, she found herself aboard a Carathian transport ship, traveling to the Galactic Council headquarters in the Andromeda system. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from hundreds of different species arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking platform. As Dr. Park walked to the podium, she noticed that the other delegates were watching her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her words being translated into dozens of alien languages simultaneously. "I am here to present Earth's application for membership in the galactic community." The response was immediate and surprising. Respectful silence. According to the Carathian delegation leader, who had agreed to sponsor Earth's membership, word of humanity's resistance had spread throughout the galaxy. Other species had begun to question whether the Empire's expansion policy was as unstoppable as they had believed. "The humans have shown us something we had forgotten," the Carathian representative announced to the Council. "They have reminded us that true strength comes not from the ability to conquer, but from the willingness to stand up for what you believe in, regardless of the odds." Earth's membership was approved unanimously, making humanity the first species to join the Galactic Council after successfully resisting Carathian conquest. As Dr. Park left the council chambers, she reflected on how much had changed. 6 months. How humanity had been alone in the universe, facing what seemed like certain destruction. Now they were part of a galactic community, respected not because they had superior technology, but because they had proven that some things were worth fighting for. The other species kept their distance, but it wasn't out of fear or hostility. It was out of respect for a species that had taught the galaxy's greatest military power that sometimes the best way to win a war is to convince your enemy that Tuom